I just want to thank everyone that is here tonight. We would be nowhere without our volunteers, and I love that we've seen each other so much over the last few years. I know pre-COVID, we had our flu clinics about on an annual basis, and that's kind of when we saw each other. Maybe we do a shelter training here and there, but the good that came out of COVID was the fact that we do get to see each other so often. I think we've built great relationships. The MRC is working really closely with CERT. The hope is to kind of join forces and provide a really robust program, providing more training opportunities. We do Trish, to give Trish another shout out, Trish, no spotlight on you. So she is now CPR certified to train and to teach CPR courses. So her and Kathy Garvin have volunteered to teach a few more CPR classes. So we're looking forward to doing that. And then Trish, as if she doesn't have enough on her plate, did do the mental health first aid trainer course along with Linda Anderson, who is the lead nurse for the schools, for the Walpole Public Schools. So that's another training that we're looking to bring to our MRC and our CERT that we're looking forward to. But if at any point in time, if there's any training opportunities or items that you would like us to bring to the table, definitely let us know. We will be reaching out to our volunteers to try to like an annual inventorying of what we have. We did get some grant funding recently, so we have some new CPR mannequins, which is awesome. So anything like that, definitely don't be shy. We do in the back table, we have some swag, some backpacks. If anyone wants to take one, you're more than welcome to. There's some handouts as well. So I believe a good majority of you are in what's called Mass Response, which is the state database. If you're not, I encourage you to do so. It's not that you have to volunteer, throughout the Commonwealth. It just provides you the opportunity. If there's a need, they would reach out firsthand, and then if you choose to volunteer, you can do so. But at no point in time are you, held to volunteer at every circumstance. So if you need help signing on, I know it's a little cumbersome. There's multiple steps. Definitely feel free to reach out to me or my office, and we can kind of walk you through it. But it kind of legitimizes the volunteer. You get your badge. We have all of your information. If you're credentialed at all, we're up to date with credentialing and everything like that. So I want to thank our volunteers. You honestly are amazing. We would not be able to run any of our clinics that we've run over the last 2.5 years, hazardous waste days. I just feel like we're relying so much on our volunteers. So I hope you know how grateful we are, and I hope to do these meet and greets a little more often so we can see each other and gather. And I know a lot of you volunteers are longtime volunteers, but maybe you haven't met one another because you volunteered at different shifts. So I like the opportunity for everyone to kind of meet and mingle. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. So I'm going to throw it over to Rachel Jackson, one of our co-chairs for the MRC, to introduce Greg for you.
Oh boy. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So we are lucky to have Greg Shore here tonight with us. He's going to talk to us about mental health and the state of mental health and mental health intervention. Greg served as a police officer on the Norwood Police Department for 18 years and is also a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. He is nationally certified in mental health first aid as an instructor, and he has trained over 3,000 law enforcement officers, emergency 911 dispatchers, firefighters, public employees, and schools in this subject matter. Additionally, Greg instructs individuals in trauma, suicide prevention, and substance disorders. So, here's Greg.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just pull up my PowerPoint here. All right, can everybody hear me? All right, I would try and stay as close to this because they asked me to speak into the mic, but I'm a little bit of a wanderer, and I'm kind of animated, so I will do my best. I appreciate all you guys coming here tonight. When they asked me, would you come and speak on the behalf of the town of Walpole? It brought me back to thinking about something. Why would I do that? And I thought about it's who I am, and that's why I'm here. And a little bit of that throughout my life, I've been able to give back through some of my career choices, whether it's been working for the Norwood Police Department, whether it's been in the United States Air Force, or whether it's been going out and training police officers, dispatchers, school faculties, staff, things like that. It is important to me to do some of that volunteer work, and that's what I thought about when I heard that it was going to be all volunteers basically here tonight, to give something back to the community I live in. I'm a resident of Walpole. Don't tell anybody. Another transplant from Norwood coming here. But I do love this community. I feel ingrained in it. And I've spent the last 5 years in here. And that's really what it's all about. I think back to a little story when I was younger. I come from a big Irish Catholic family, 8 kids, as you can only imagine. A lot of no thrills, no frills, right? We had each other, and that was really, back then, life was simpler. We didn't have all these computers and cell phones and all those type of things. So our engagement in the community was a lot of volunteer work. It was being involved in our church, St. Catherine's for us. And my mother was staunch about that. You had to volunteer in some way. I was an altar boy, my brothers were, or you had to be in the choir, or my sisters all worked at the rectory, same with my grandmother, just basically giving back. About the time of maybe the first 6, 7 years of my life, very structured, very giving back to our community in that way, just like some of you here. Till one point, my family said, we got to bring everybody in, we have to have a family discussion. And my mother and father called us all in, and they wanted to tell us some good news. I was going to have a younger sister. Now, I was number 7 on the poll. So I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, this is awesome. I can't believe I'm going to have finally, I won't get bullied. But the reality was that big gap. It was really different to see and think about, why would my parents be having another child so far in between as they have the other 7, right? Well, come to find out, it must have been one that, kind of got past the goalie's net in that one, right, in that sense. But the reality was, when we found out that good news, and we were so excited that day, we wouldn't know that within that next 9 months, we'd be in Children's Hospital, and the doctors would be telling my family some bad news. Hey, that bundle of joy that you're expecting, that little girl, well, she has something called trisomy 9, a very, very debilitating disease. Most people don't live from it. And the reality was, when we heard that news, my mother was like, first of all, I refuse to believe that. Second of all, I'm not giving up. That's my daughter. I'm going to make it work, right? Those type of things. But from that moment on, it changed our lives and our family forever, forever. Within that same calendar year, and thank God, my sister, even though she was supposed to live only about 3 to 4 weeks, she went on to live many more years, shorter lifespan, but way longer than expected. So every day was a blessing. But from that time, from that first 9 months until about a year later, we had the second time that we'd ever have a huge family meeting like that. And my father and mother sat us down and said, hey, I just want you to let you know, we have some really bad news. And I was kind of like, all right, it's usually some big type of news. And they said, Mom's been diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. And I was like, wow. I'm like, I don't even know what that is at this point. You're an 8, 9-year-old kid, something like that. Well, basically, once they explained what it was, and my mother had the worst version of it, a very degenerative disease, and it was going to debilitate her. Now, all those things that we were raised up on, the giving back, working in the community, as our lives were starting to fall apart, those other people in our community that we had always volunteered with, that we had always helped out with, they were the ones who gave back. Unfortunately, my household, as you can imagine, wasn't normal from that day on, from those 2 incidents. My father, unfortunately, turned to alcohol, became despondent from the family, all the way up to the fact that at about age 13, when my mother had finally passed, he had lost the house to gambling, drinking, those type of things. It was devastating in my life. But in that same time, when I looked back years later, the families in our community, the volunteers that my mother used to work with, were the people who came rushing into the fire, not running away from it. They were the ones who brought meals every week. Even like when my mother was sick, she was bedridden in a hospital bed in my house. We couldn't cook. I was a young kid. Some of my sisters had moved out. My father was just non-existent. They used to bring us meals every single week, stock our fridge, do those type of kind things for us, make sure that we were getting by every day. And it was just, we didn't even think about it at the time. I reflect back on that as an adult, and it inspired me later on in life to be like, all right, what do I want to do? What do I want to give back to say, I appreciate those things. I can never thank those families for what they did for us. I'll never be able to repay them, that's for sure. But I can also try and give back. So hopefully, just by having this small intervention with you guys tonight is my way of giving back a little bit to our community, to our volunteers, but also to say thank you. That will be the way I want to start tonight, by saying thank you to all of you for what you do, for your unselfish, kind acts, and hopefully we'll end the night with that same thing. Thank you to all of you for everything you do. I really appreciate it, and I applaud you guys. So thank you. Give each other a round of applause. Thank you so much. You guys deserve it, and that's really what it comes down to. So that's why I'm here tonight. Why are you all here? That's the big question. Why are you all here? I know you probably got told, hey, you have to keep up with these certifications, and you got to do it for whatever reason. But most of you probably have some good intents in your life, and you're good people. So I assume that you're here for different reasons. What are those reasons that motivate you, not just tonight, but to go and do those kind, unselfish acts? When you volunteer and you go help other people, whether it's in a clinic or whatever setting you're doing in it, what is it that makes you all do that? Anybody tell me? What are some of the reasons why you do it? Anybody?
Brought up the same way you were. I started volunteering as a kid with my family.
So it was passed on, it was ingrained in you from a family.
Yeah.
Okay. And how does it make you feel from doing that type of stuff?
I enjoy it.
Fulfilling?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
Back to the community.
Giving back to the community. It's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing, right? And you get to bond with those people. And that's why it was nice anyway to have all these, pastries and refreshments for all you guys before and after, be able to socialize, meet each other, and kind of get a little bonding and stuff like that. Because think about it. You're all in some way so like-minded because of the role you do and the things you do with each other. That's inspiring to me. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm retired, I have time, and enjoy contributing and helping when I can.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, these are all good reasons. That's why you guys do those things. And I ask you that because there needs to be a reminder. A few of you actually looked like maybe you were like, geez, why do I do this, right? And you hadn't thought about it in a while. It is good to remember why we do those things because it puts us in that mind frame of when we're going to go out and work with people in the community. Why are you there? What do you actually bring to the table? What are your assets? What makes you so valuable to them? Why do people want you to keep coming back? Besides you're free. But other than that. So, my biggest question right here, right? Readiness check. All these things. Who helps the helpers? That's a big question. Who helps you all? Huh? You help each other. Awesome. Do you feel like, and this is a rhetorical question, but feel free to yell it out. I like to have that facilitated discussion because it is about you. I like the training I always put together, whether it's for police officers, whether it's for schools, dispatchers. Most of the material I already know. I'm blessed in that way, but it's passing it on to you guys. It's about you. Who else supports you besides each other? Do you feel like you have support from up above? What do you all think?
Board of Health.
Board of Health, that's good, right? And that is important. And I say that is because no matter what, right, and I'm not saying it good or bad, when you ask yourself this question, who is helping those helpers? I tell police officers, dispatchers, and all these first responders, firefighters that have gone to train, has anybody asked you how you're doing? Think about that, right? Have you asked each other, how are you doing? And asking those right questions. And why is it so important? Because you're willing to go out and help all these people unselfishly, but sometimes we forget to look around the room of the people who we care about and work with, that we actually have a face to, right? So like all those people passing through, you see them all, just, okay, steady flow of people, turn out the next person, turn out the next person. It's great that you all do that. But just remember what's going on in those other people's lives. Do you understand that? Do you recognize that? And do the people up above you, did they ask those things? I will say, by the opening between Melissa and Rachel, I think you guys are in a unique position of feeling lucky enough that they do care and they are good people, that they actually want to know those things. Have you done a self-assessment? Before you walk out to volunteer, or even in life, but especially when you go out to volunteer, when you work in any capacity with the public and you're representing the communities that you guys take such pride in working in, Have you done a self-assessment? How am I today? Do you guys do that? Do you think about yourselves? Do you think of what's going on in your own lives? Do you think how it might affect you on that day when you go to work with those people and talk with those people? Because if you don't, you might not know that you're not prepared to go, right? I always tell all the law enforcement, all the first responders, what do? I said, I always use car analogies because for some reason cops can get car analogies. We're like cars sometimes, right? We're always going down the road. We're trying to go to the next call, help the next person, help the next person, help the next person. We always get to that point where that little yellow light turns on in the car, right? And the fuel's low. And you know, there's a sign that says right in 5 miles from now, you can get gas. So what should you do? Probably pull off and get some gas, right? But you keep saying to yourself, it's okay. I can push a little further. I can do a little more. And then all of a sudden, you find yourself on the side of the road broken down because you weren't prepared, because you tried to push yourself too far. Don't be that person. If you feel like you need help yourselves, make sure, have you made that assessment? How do I feel today? What's going on in my life that might affect me emotionally, physically, mentally when I go into these type of volunteer trainings, when I go into those type of situations where I'm helping other people? And are you checking on your fellow workers? You said, and a few others said, are you? So you already answered that. I think that's phenomenal that you do that for each other. Make sure, before you guys start for the day, hey, how's everything going? What's been happening in your life? How are you feeling? Ask the right questions. Not, how's it going today? It's going. That's it. If you ask the wrong question, and I'm not saying you have to ask that to every person, but if you notice that person who's usually the bubbly, nice, happy person, you know that person's baseline, right? So you know what they look like at their best, or at least at normal. If something doesn't look right, maybe the question then would be, how are you feeling today? Are you okay? Those type of things. Think about those things the next time when you're talking even to your coworkers, or maybe even some of your command staff, supervisors, anything like that. So why is that so important to do? And we just kind of gave a glance over it. That self-assessment, we tend to carry our own luggage. If we carry our own luggage around, right, our own baggage into these volunteer situations, or you're working in a clinic or something like that, do you think that's going to have an effect on the public, the consumer, whatever you want to refer to them as? What do you all think? How can it affect them? Give me some examples. What do you think? Awesome. Anxious. I love it. Great. Not feeling confident. Anyone else? What are some other examples maybe?
They might not be so trusting of you,
Awesome.
depending on your attitude.
Your attitude. Great. What about, could it possibly be that you've upset them? That it becomes confrontational? And you're thinking in your own mind, screw this person. They don't know what I've went through today, right? Could that be a possibility? Yeah, absolutely. And you're right in thinking that sometimes because they don't know what you've gone through today. They almost assume and expect you to be the customer service representative for them. You represent the community. They are thinking you're going to be the happy, smiling, engaging face that they expect, right? Like you personify everything amazing about a volunteer, right? But we all have our little, quirks about our own personalities, for good, bad, or indifferent. So it is important to know what are those baggages that we're carrying around with us. How do we bring it into that environment? And are you able to separate that during that time? And if not, then maybe you need that extra break, or reach out to somebody during your volunteer time to say, hey, listen, I'm just not right today. I might need an extra break, or maybe I need to go home early, or whatever the case may be. At the end of this course, I hope that you'll understand what I refer to as situational awareness, which is really just kind of assessment of a situation. What we do all the time, I've done throughout my whole career in law enforcement, we are constantly scanning, thinking of what might happen next, anticipating what how it might play out. And if we can do that and make assessments and know beforehand, we'll be one step ahead. And while you can't always see it coming, a lot of times there is writing on the wall, there's signs and symptoms of somebody in distress, in a crisis, somebody who might be going through a mental health episode. Those type of things, those signs and symptoms are probably going to be evident. And nobody's asking anybody today, especially because I don't have enough time, that's usually like a 4 to 8 hour course that I teach, but to recognize that just something's wrong. Nobody's asking you to diagnose people. It's just you get that gut feeling, or you're through your years of working with people, you just say, something's not right. I'm not sure what it is, but I know something's not right. And that's the most important thing. It's just recognizing something's not right from there. Recognizing the stages of escalation, common triggers, agitation, and aggression. Hopefully you'll be able to recognize some of those things that we're talking about today. And some of them might sound so simplistic, so overt. But the bottom line is, we don't often think about it. And if you don't run into it all the time, you might not have that expertise in it. I always tell people, the cops on the job, especially the young guys, used to ask me, Greg, how did you become so good at working with people in crisis? How do you de-escalate people like that? Is it some magic wand you have? I said, it's a combination of things. First of all, I made a lot of mistakes. That was part of it. And I'm just overt about that. I tell people outright, right? I learned things through my career. I did a lot of the things the wrong way when I was a young guy. Just getting away with, being quick on your feet, being overreactive, whatever the case may be. But a lot of them were bad and negative behaviors. And I had to learn how to correct those and become better at it. And that's a huge component of it, just having a self-reflection on my own. Just saying, hey, those things, I wouldn't want somebody else treating me like that. The other part is really when you're talking about de-escalation or escalating somebody is just how do we treat people that you would want to be treated, whether it was a family, friend, co-worker, anything like that in another community. I try and put a face to everything. Make that empathetic response. And the only way to do that is if you come in contact with somebody who's going through a situation, whether it's a crisis, something like that, how would you want them to treat the person that you care about? Your friend, family, whoever it is that you care about, in what capacity? If you put that face to somebody else that you might know, I guarantee you're going to have a more empathetic response in how you deal with them. How to intervene with escalating clients using verbal de-escalation techniques, and that's really what it comes down to by the end of the day. Hopefully we can all learn that. So in any conflict, you have two choices. You can either escalate the incident further or you can de-escalate that, right? Crossing the line into those crisis situations. What do you guys think? Do you think that everybody can be de-escalated? What do you think? No? Who thinks yes? Raise your hand if you think yes. Who thinks no? The rest of you? A large majority, right? And no, listen, nobody's trained here, so it's okay. No is really the answer, right? We learn these techniques, we practice them, we try and get better. Like I said, part of those techniques and learning them is I used to implement them all the time. So the more you use them, it's like a sharpening of a skill. If you use it a lot, you probably become better at it. If you're not so good at it or you don't get the opportunity to use it that often, you might lose it, forget what to do, or just be overwhelmed by the situation that presents itself. Because a lot of those in crisis situation, if you're not trained for it, it can be overwhelming. Wait until someone gets up in your face or you're in a threatening situation or something like that. You're calm and cool sitting in a seat. But if somebody comes up to you and it becomes real all of a sudden, well, things change really quickly, right? And then all of a sudden you get overwhelmed. You might do something out of character, say something that you normally would have said, geez, that's not me. I wouldn't have said or done that. Those type of things that we have to think about. So how we're going to react, which way are we going to go? And I say that is because if we think about it happening at any given moment, at any given time, so I'm not saying you have to obsess about it, but at least know in the back of your mind, when you see something kind of cropping up, that you say, all right, this could happen. What should I start thinking about? If that person got loud, if they got in my space, how would I react? thinking about those things is really important. Because if you train to do those things, or at least run those mental things through your mind, you will be better prepared to handle that situation. I can guarantee you that. Otherwise, you're probably going to make it a negative situation, and you're going to escalate it, right? And that's not what we want. I put this little video here because this is reality. We always have to know we need to be in control of ourselves too. And sometimes we think we are, and what our perception of being in control is might not always be what the actual reality is. So I put this up, a little video. Hopefully you can hear it. Oh, of course you can't.
I lost my composure.
I blame that on Melissa and not myself. I will not take blame for that. All right, we have no sound. But basically, do you guys all know Will Ferrell? All right, it is him after he just gotten ridiculously burned right up there, right? And he's basically telling everybody, nobody lose control. Everybody calm down. Everybody stay in control. But he's the one out of control, right? So we have to think about those type of things. Are we actually in control? What's our perception? You might be in a conflict with somebody, and someone might come up to you afterwards and go, wow, I've never seen you like that. What are you talking about? I was fine. I had it together. And they're going, no, you weren't. It's easier to recognize that in somebody else, but not in ourselves sometimes, right? Company included. So, sorry that didn't work. It's actually a really funny video. And I love Will Ferrell. All right, we can't get behind that. Let me bounce out of that and move on. All right, so our strengths and weaknesses. How our personality affects others when we're working with the public. What do you think? What could be a strength and a weakness of our own personalities when we work with the general public, community members? What do you all think?
Listening skills.
Okay, in what sense? What could that be? Positive, negative, what?
I think it's a positive thing to listen and let them talk first and think what they're feeling,
Awesome, awesome. Could it be a negative?
not listening.
Awesome. See what I mean? So it's a little bit of that balance. What's another one? What's another trait? Strengths and weaknesses. Who said that? Okay. And how could that be?
Now you get into a bad situation, go in and act all upset and riled from it, then they're gonna get more upset and riled from it.
Absolutely. Just that persona exactly in the video that we were just watching, right? So everybody else is in there calm, and that person is escalating, and they're loud, and they're out of control, and that brings the other person up, right? Sir?
Showing maturity,
Okay.
maybe gray hair, or just,
Awesome. No, I love that. So what do you think that brings to the table?
may have been through it yourself. It depends on how much time you have to communicate with this person.
Yep.
Sometimes it may be held against you, I'm going through.
See? So it could go either way. And I love that one. That's a great perspective. And that's really unique. And I love that. And especially since, what about even the fact that he said the maturity thing, and it could be used against him as being like, you wouldn't understand. Hey, old man, listen, Pops, you don't know what it's like in this generation. Or what if it's that other person who goes, you know what? I might be a little out of control right now, but the one thing in my life is I just can't disrespect like an elder or somebody like a father figure or something like that. Absolutely, that could end up happening. So our strengths and weaknesses in so many different ways, because that might just be an appearance. That could be what the person is feeling, or what they're personifying is. So all those are great answers, and I think they really do bring a lot to the table. So think about what our strengths and weaknesses are every time that we're going in to a crisis situation. Our personality versus part of the equation. Is that person introvert? Are they an extrovert? How do you think that could help or hurt? Say the person has that outgoing personality. How could that be negative in a situation of somebody coming into a crisis?
Unpredictable.
Unpredictable. Okay, great. Love that. What else?
Threatening.
Threatening. What about coming from you from the person's perspective, you come up to them and you're that extrovert and you're right on, hey, how you doing today? How's everything going? And you're just so like, that's me, right? I'm like the Kool-Aid guy. Remember the old commercials? And I'm like so energetic that I run through the walls. That is literally me. I'm the guy that never was allowed to have coffee after midnight on shift and stuff like that. Is that person a hands-on person? Right? And some of us are physical people. Could that be a positive or a negative?
Both.
Okay, give me a perspective. What do you think?
I happen to be a hands-on person,
Okay.
but when you're in a situation, be careful, because if you approach someone or and sometimes it's great, it's comforting, but other times escalate, as you say.
Absolutely. And I have a deep, dark secret. I'm a hugger, so don't feel bad. I'm a hugger, right? So I'm always like, come in for the real thing. Let's do this, right? And I just met you, but I want to hug you. That type of thing. But can it be negative? Yes. And we have to be careful because we don't know where those people have been and where they've been through in their lives. And if they are in crisis, we don't know what type of trauma they've dealt with, right? All the way from childhood. But, I mean, we deal with people, whether it's in any facet of the community. I used to tell law enforcement all the way up to EMS and firefighters and everything. Sometimes we just do, and especially in law enforcement and first responders. We're hands-on people. Oh, somebody has a wound. I'm just going to touch you. Oh, somebody's going to be under arrest. I'm just going to touch you. Oh, you're in the back of my ambulance. I'm just going to stick you with this needle. I have to do this because that's what I know is right to do. That's my job. Does that mean that we can't articulate or verbalize that before? Absolutely. And because we don't know what type of trauma people have been through too, right? What if, and I always give this example, what if it was a female and she had been sexually assaulted at some point in her life? And then somebody goes and they are that touchy-feely person, and now, even if they didn't make a big deal out of it, inside, now they're bursting. They're like, I can't believe you just touched me. This man just touched me. Could they get upset just by that alone? And now by nothing else, that their day was maybe okay, but now somebody just invaded their space and said, hey, sweetheart, and put their hands on them or something like that to that effect. That could be detrimental, right? Yeah. And that could re-traumatize somebody. So, we always think about that. I would avoid touching people as much as possible in those type of situations. But if you are, and you said to somebody, would you be okay if I put my hand on your back or your shoulder in a comforting way, and they acknowledge that, then that's fine. But I would definitely ask first, honestly. That comes from, learning through experience. That loud versus quiet, couldn't they be intimidating? Could be a challenge for an elder on the other end of that, right? So you might have that other person who is loud, who might come off as intimidating. You might have that person who's quiet. And what if you had an elderly person and they start getting agitated going, why is that person so quiet? Can you speak up? I can't hear you. And they start yelling at you, right? And you're like, hey, why are you yelling? Well, they can't hear well. They have a hearing aid issue, whatever the case may be. So be mindful of that, how we talk to people, how far away we talk to people, and at what tone is going to be a big thing, what we talk about with people in general throughout de-escalation and escalation. What's our expectations of others in society? That's a big thing because you come in and you go, hey, I'm volunteering. This is my environment. You're supposed to be here. You're supposed to have a certain type of decorum. You're supposed to follow the rules. You're supposed to do this. But in reality, we know people have so many different walks of life. And if somebody comes in a crisis situation or has a mental health issue, they might not be playing by those same rules. We can't always expect that everybody's going to be a model citizen walking through the door and they're just going to be robotic. They come in, here's my pizza paper, filled it out, I'm going to be nice to you, and here you go, jab me in the arm, right? And that's it. Thank you, have a nice day. It's not always that easy, is it? What do you think? No, definitely not, right? If it was, we wouldn't need any of it.
Would be nice.
So I'll give it a quick glance over. I talked about the 7 stages of escalation. These are the things that we can look for in persons' behavioral issues, right? And like I said, we're always making assessments. when we're in the room, when you watch people come in, you can always be making assessments. What is that person appearing to be like at this moment? Are they calm? Are they cooperative? Just like you just said. Everybody should be like that, right? Exactly. But they're not. The triggers, those personal experiences, do they have unresolved conflicts? Does this triggers the person's behavior to escalate? Number 3, are they agitated? Do they feel unfocused? Are they upset? And like I said, it could be as simple as something that, from that cumulative stress, maybe they were stressed out before they came in. Then all of a sudden, one thing more happened, and they're like, hey, you walked in, you go, listen, you came at a busy time. It's going to be about a half hour. That stressed them out enough that pushed them over the edge. That escalation. Acceleration. The conflict remains unsolved, and the person focuses only on the conflict. That's where it starts to get dangerous, right? Because they can't get out of that loop. All they can think about is obsessing over it. And unbeknownst to you, you could end up being involved with the part of that that isn't so good, right? That conflict, right? Because they need somebody to be a challenge with, right? They're not just going to have an internal struggle. The peak, the person's out of control and they exhibit the severe behavior. So now it's beyond you assessing, no, that person doesn't seem like they're okay right now. Now it's out there for everybody to see. They're expressing that behavior through verbal, through their physical movements, through anger, or whatever the case may be. Maybe physically hitting a wall. De-escalation. Events in the peak stage, person displays confusion, severity of peak behavior subsides, right? So while there is that crisis moment and there's conflict, there is a moment there for resolution as well, which is the good thing, right? And most people who are that enraged, a lot of times it only lasts for a certain amount of time. And that's why, I think you said earlier, one of those good things is, and I always tell people, even suicidal people, the one thing that we know is rage typically, if you can start to bring it down and not further agitate it, it will subside. How minimized that is all depends on the person and the situation. But typically it won't keep going through if we can intervene at that time in a positive way and start de-escalating. That's the important part. When can we start doing it? How do we start doing it? And getting those people to come down. And hopefully that, that wears off. Because it takes a lot of energy to be angry and mad and upset, right? It does. So most people, in my last minutes, in my last hours, or maybe a few days, something like that. But typically, it will go down if we can get in there at the right time. And what's the person's recovery process? They display willingness to participate in activities. And that's going to be important too, right? Because while you might have that person one day who wasn't your model citizen, who knows? You might know them from the community, and they typically had a bad day or something like that. Hopefully, we're like most people will say, oh, I believe in second chances. And then they'll be able to reacclimate and come back into your clinics and come back. Who knows? Maybe they even have a positive experience with you because you did something so good to de-escalate them. They said, geez, I wasn't myself that day. Could I tell you what happened? And it's a better time to talk because I'm in a reasonable mind frame. And you know what? I not only apologize to you, but I thank you for your patience and your kindness that day. And I can only imagine what you went through. Now, as a bad experience on the other end of that, they may never come back. You may never have that, relationship with that person. They may have always that bitter taste about the community and what our, town presents to them. And we hopefully never want that. Oop, why did that do that? So who are they and why they might be in crisis? We need to know some of those reasons. And while I can't cover every single reason tonight, for obvious reasons, for time, there are some that, gleam out at us. What do you all think? What are some of the reasons that you could think of that these people,
Loss of loved one,
Loss of loved one. Great. What do you mean by that?
like an accident or.
Absolutely. A death, right? Anything like that. Imagine losing a loved one, right? And like I said, imagine all of a sudden they just walk in your clinic and it was like they had that appointment, so they had to keep it. And they came in, but they were recently mourning. Or maybe it's an anniversary of a death, right? We're coming into the holiday season. All of a sudden somebody just walks in here and they go, oh my gosh, I lost my Henry. last year, and we used to love coming into the counseling on aging. We used to play games in here and so on and so forth, and they keep thinking in their mind. But it got them upset by the way things are now, or how the place is presented, or where are all the people I knew who used to work here, whatever it is that was triggering to them. So yeah, that's a great one like that, loss of a loved one. What else?
Disaster, loss of possessions, their home, fire, whatever.
Awesome, yep, absolutely. Anyone else?
Financial.
Financial, right? I mean, look at the way the economy is and everything right now, right? A lot of people you could see stressing about things like that, right? Well, let me ask you this. Can anybody think of anything related to your clinic that might set the person off, might be in crisis from?
Fear.
What is it?
Fear.
Fear. It's a great one, right? What would they be scared of?
Needles.
Needles.
Sickness, illness, the virus, everything. We've heard it all.
Awesome, right? So, it could be misinformation. It could be lack of information. It could be the fear of saying, what if I'm the person who has that one bad reaction to it? I mean, there's a lot of things to think about when you think about what you're providing as the actual service, right? So when someone's coming into a clinic, that anxiety, that fear could be overwhelming for that person. And that could get them excited. And like I said, maybe not that for your average person that might experience that, but somebody with an anxiety disorder, somebody who's already stressed out, somebody who's already going through a similar mental health crisis, could that contribute and put them over the edge? Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a huge one to think about. What about a psychiatric illness? Mental health episode. What do you think? Right? We have a lot of people in our community that are suffering from mental health disorders, right? Some of them untreated, right? And a lot of times they do come in contact with our public officials, right? I worked in law enforcement, and I know this gentleman here, he's a past firefighter and stuff like that. So we have some people with experience with that. When somebody's going through an episode, it is much different than when somebody's just walking around the community, maybe on their regular day basis or something like that. But typically, if they come into your environment, into a situation like that, yeah, they might be in a crisis mode. How do we attend to those people? How do we get those people help in the moment? You know what I mean? I'm not asking you to find out everything about them. I'm not asking you to cure them, be their clinicians. But sometimes we can be a good conduit. We can get people out of a crisis moment. We might be able to get them the right resources and transfer them over to somebody where it might be more applicable. And again, I can't tell you, because I don't have enough time, how to recognize all those signs and symptoms of what different types of mental illnesses look like. And we can talk about a few things tonight, maybe even like somebody who's in a manic episode. I don't like ever defining because mania can be very confusing to the lame person, right? So mania is that rapid speech, that grandiose ideas. You hear someone talking just nonsensical maybe, and you're like, whoa, what's going on here, right? And you're not sure what is really happening. They might mix, different sentences, go over stories. They may even say offensive things, right? The bottom line is, it's helpful to know what that looks like, but not diagnose somebody. Because typically, what type of terminology, any phrase that somebody might use for somebody who's manic, what do we always say? What might they be? Crazy, but what else? What type of diagnosis might they have? That person. Anybody? Bipolar, right? And they might be, but that's not our job. Bipolar is not as common as some people might think, but that's up to a clinician to diagnose, right? And there are other mental health disorders, several of them, that involve mania. So that's the important thing. That's the reason we don't want to just say, oh, that person's bipolar or something like that. It also can be insulting to somebody, but we don't want to say, oh, they're bipolar, and we don't know that. When mania can be a present in bipolar disorder, psychoaffective disorder, all types of things, schizophrenia, all those type of things. So we don't want to just label people, so that's important. Substance abuse, what do you think? Got to be somebody who's going to come into crisis? What do you think? Especially walking into your clinic. How could that become a problem? Huh? Needles, that's a great one, right? Needles. Yep, needle user, even though we do typically in Massachusetts give out clean needles, but it could be. What about confrontational? Alcoholic, great. Or any type of substance that's going to be a depressant or anything like that, right? But all those type of things with a substance user or abuser, could they become confrontational? Sure. Yeah, absolutely, right? So thinking about what type of people we might run into, do they have a prior history of violence? Do you recognize that person? Oh, geez, I know that person. They've been violent here before. Or I know them from another facet in the community, and I know they have violent tendencies. I'm not saying go up to them and be like, hey, welcome here because we know you have a history of violence, but keeping in the back of your mind, could something arise from this? How is somebody treating them? Those type of things. Highly stressful situations, we talked about some of those, and cumulative stress, right? That's that just one more thing. Everybody's got their own level of stress every day, but that cumulative stress, right? It's the one more thing on top that boiled over the pot of water, right? It pushed them over the edge. They had too many things going on, and they had that negative discharge from the day, and they brought it to you in your clinic. So be aware of that. Some of those other things, removal of children, court proceedings, huge life-changing things in their thing. Political motivation. Do you think that could be a huge issue in here?
Yes.
What do you think? In what sense?
Disagreements, different beliefs.
Okay.
I don't know, it's been the way of the world the last couple of years.
Absolutely. And it is big to talk about and recognize, right? Because we talk about that, they could be anti-vax, whatever the case may be. But the most important thing, we're talking about somebody who does bring up that type of situation to be aware of, so we never want to engage in that with them. Don't endorse or fight with them about their own beliefs or ideas. Remember, you're in a working capacity. That's not your job at that time. Stay neutral. It doesn't matter what you believe. You might actually believe the same exact thing that they do. Do not agree, endorse, or disagree with them. Just stay out of it. Be like, you know what? We're here just to provide a service. We're trying to get as many people as vaccinated. That's our job and our role here. We hope that, you're happy with what happens here today and how you're provided with these services. And it was great to see you. And don't engage in those things. You don't want to get baited into those things because it can turn out really bad. First Amendment auditors. I know this may sound weird, but does anybody know what a First Amendment auditor is? All right, a First Amendment auditor is, for lack of a better term, they're kind of rabble-rousers. They go into public spaces, police stations, post offices, community places, right? They'll go into public buildings, and they'll typically start asking for certain information. They might start videotaping and recording. And you might say to them, oh, you're not allowed to do that here. What are you doing? No, you don't need to leave. Okay. But when we're in a public space and you're in a community that you're saying is welcome to everybody and you invited them in, do they have that right to be there? Do they have a right to videotape? What are they videotaping? These are things to think about. Because if they do, and they do go into a lot of, and they come in Massachusetts, right? A lot of police departments, a lot of post offices, a lot of public buildings and spaces. You do not want to engage with them, except in a polite way. Okay, hey, listen, if there's something we can help you with, we will help you. Do not immediately kick them out. Alert a supervisor. Let a supervisor deal with that. If you need to call law enforcement, then that's fine. But trust me, they know more about the law than you will ever know. And probably your police too. Because that's all they do all day. And you guess what they do? They videotape it because they have the right to, in most cases, and they will put you on YouTube. And you don't want to be that person who's going, hey, get out of here. You're not allowed to do that, and grabbing their phone or something like that. All right? So just be aware if you see somebody like that and they're acting suspicious, they're asking questions, they start videotaping, bring that to a higher level. I would not suggest you as a volunteer get entangled or involved with those people. All right? Cool. Powerlessness, fear, grief, all those type of things can be combined together. If somebody's feeling those things, they feel like their life's out of control. They feel like they've lost power through everything. And here they are, you telling them, moving them around like a piece of meat. Do this, do that. No, roll up your sleeve. People like to be in control. But people in crisis especially feel like they've lost a lot, right? So think about that when you're talking to those individuals, what it looks like in the user's mind if they've lost that control. That's what we'll talk about a little bit later about small empowerments, you know what I mean? Giving that power back to the people. Oh, which arm would you like me to do that in? Simple things that you might be able to suggest to them. That feeling of injustice, right? You could get a lot of that, right, in here now. You're disproportionately only vaccinating people that are white. Something like that, right? Just giving an example, but could somebody have that perception? And like I said, it doesn't even mean it's real. That person could actually perceive that, and it might be their actual thoughts or beliefs. So just be respectful of that. Hey, listen, I'm really sorry you feel that way. We're welcoming to everybody here, right? We treat everybody the same way. We want you to have the same experience as anybody else. Is that person suicidal? Do they have access to weapons? Good thing to know. You know, if somebody's articulating those things of hopelessness, helplessness, they're talking about how they've been depressed. Maybe you ask them, hey, how's your day going? I'm really sad. I'm really depressed. Those type of things. Okay. Are they feeling suicidal? Do they articulate those type of things? Does a person have access to a weapon? Have they conveyed they have weapons? Obviously, if they're talking in any form or fashion while they're in here about weapons, threatening that, conveying that, that's something immediate. That's out of your scope right then and there, right? You bring that up to a supervisor, you quietly move off, call law enforcement, whatever you need to do. Keeping yourself safe. That person has a physical disability or chronic pain. So a lot of times, a physical disability can come up as a lot of other things, right? Somebody who might be like, oh, are they mentally ill? Who knows? Maybe they just talk loudly in public, one of those types of things. Maybe, hopefully, you know that person in your community, right? I worked with a lot of developmentally disabled people because my sister obviously was near and dear to my heart, and so you know I always think we gotta be able to recognize those things to maybe help and treat those people just a little more with those kid gloves. So hopefully we do. But could you easily get somebody who's in here who's autistic, and they might be saying something loud or even offensive or something blunt that they can't control themselves, and another consumer could go, I'm really offended. Well, this person's, really unsettling to me, right? How are you going to deal with that situation? Think about that. How do you diffuse that crisis there, right? How do you explain to them, hey, listen, this person may actually have something else going on. They can't control that. Talk it out with them. Don't be dismissive. They may just be lack of educated people, right? And that's okay, but just explain it to them. Walk it through. I think we lost it. All right, here we go. All right, those common signs of agitation. What do they look like? That raised voice, right? Now, I know this because I'm a loud talker, right? I told you, I come from a family of 8, so I used to have to dance on the kitchen table naked if I just wanted mashed potatoes, right? So I always just grew up being loud. But people might, portray that as being like, wow, he's an aggressive person or something like that, right? I'm the Kool-Aid guy. That high-pitched voice, though, that rapid speech that they might be exhibiting, are they pacing back and forth? And I'm not talking me because I can't stay in one place and I hate being next to a podium. I'm talking they're moving back and forth. They're swinging their arms. They got their heads down. They're clenching their fists, things like that, right? Those should be signs. Those should be clues, as we call in the police world, right? You don't need to be a detective to pick up on something. Are they excessively sweating, right? You probably pretty much climate controlled in here. Are they sweating profusely? These are signs that we should be able to pick up from people going, all right, something's not right. We're in an air-conditioned, controlled climate, something like that. And like I said, it could just because some of that anxiety or something like that might be kicking in, but at least we're recognizing what it looks like. Doesn't mean everybody who's sweating is going to become a conflict for you, but it's at least an indicator of something else is going on. Excessive hand gestures, fidgeting, shaking, bald fist, clear indication something's not right. That aggressive posture, verbally abusive, and unusual statements or ideas. And some of those things could be mental health disorders involved there as well, right? A lot of people with mental illnesses, they may have delusions. They may have auditory hallucinations. You might hear them talking out loud. They may actually have voices in their head that they're, talking back to. I always tell people, common one might be, the devil or something like that. You don't tell me what, no, I'm not taking the vaccine. What? Who are you talking to? Something like that, right? It catches you off guard. You might be a little frightened, right? Not everybody with a mental health disorder, I know we see things on TV, is really a threat, right? In fact, more often I tell people it's a kind of a fallacy. Most people who actually do suffer from mental illness are more prone to being the victim of a crime, about 11 times more prone to being the victim of crime than actually being the actual perpetrator themselves. And if they are, and we come across with people with mental health issues in our society, or they come into your clinic, typically they're small things, right? What do we usually see with people with mental health issues if you come in contact with them in public? What do you think? What type of things you might see from them? What do you think? What type of behaviors are they exhibiting?
A lot of times just odd statements, or they don't make sense, or, you know, they're just
Right.
not able to connect
Yep.
the dots.
Right, but small things. It might be a little loud, or whatever the case may be. People may perceive them as disruptive, or they might be labeling them in their minds, being like, that person's crazy, stuff like that, right? But I guarantee you, most people, I mean, it's unbelievable. Even police officers, when I ask that same question, I'll be like, wait a minute, but they're not raping people, they're not robbing people, they're not killing people? Like, I thought all of them on TV, they rape, rob, and kill. I'm not saying there aren't people who have mental illnesses that don't do some of those things, but those are usually the exception, not the norm, right? And so they're like, no, it's typically, you know, somebody's like, you know, frightened by their behavior, they're being too loud, they're being disruptive, or some other type of a nuisance call, you know what I mean? So think about that. We want to leave people with a good feeling. We want to treat those people with respect still, so. Verbal de-escalation, right? That's what it really comes down to. What is the definition? An intervention for use with people who are at risk for aggression. Basically using calm language along with other communication techniques to diffuse, redirect, or de-escalate a conflicting situation, right? So there's skills that everyone can use, right? Is that agreed upon? Can we all agree that? If you have them, you can use them. And we all have them in some form or fashion. Some of us may be really good at it, and good communicators, and be able to calm ourselves down and slow ourselves down. Some maybe not as much, right? I always surprise people because I am that loud person. But when I would go in and work with someone in crisis, I would slow myself down. My cadence, my pace, my voice would become much different. Some of my friends used to laugh and be like, who just took over your body in there? And be like, that's not the same person who I work with on a day-to-day basis. And I said, because I know inside my mind, those are my own weaknesses. So I don't want them to exhibit during the crisis. I don't want that to have an influence on this call. I want the best outcome. So I have to use those skills. I have to work harder than some people who might be like the old school teacher who's like, okay, how you doing? Yeah, all right, no, that's great. And they just have this natural, calming demeanor. They're the one you just want to give a hug to. You're like, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have acted that way, right? And there's always that person too, right? And they have that natural, innate ability about them. But not everybody does. Beware of cultural and background, right? We live in a diverse world right now, right? And there's a lot of things out there. And we just have to be mindful, right? Do you speak their language, right? Most people have the common tongue, English, stuff like that. We have so many different languages, but especially Spanish, Portuguese, things like that around here that do play a factor. Is there a communication problem? Why is there a communication problem? Is it because we literally can't communicate with them? Do you have resources that you can use? Do you have somebody that speaks those languages? Do you have things on pamphlets that you can explain to them from a card written out? Whatever you can think about to break down those barriers is obviously a good thing to avoid somebody being agitated or aggravated or putting them into crisis mode going, I feel disrespected. I'm upset because, like even a 2-year-old, right? I have 3 kids. I have a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old, right? Hardest person to communicate with in my whole entire life, who gives me the hardest time every day, is my 2-year-old, because his lack of vocabulary. So what's his communication level? Me no speak now, so I just hit you, I bite you. That's what he does to let, you know, big sis and big brother, right? Because he can't communicate. That's true in any part of your life. If you lose the ability to communicate, frustration brings in, right? It creeps in. Like if you can't communicate, I don't care how old you are, what your physical capabilities are, that becomes frustrating and hard. I mean, imagine if you lost your ability to talk right now. Imagine if you had to use sign language. Imagine if you were that person who spoke a different language than everyone else, right? I mean, imagine if you were in another country right now. I'll put you in the middle of Russia right now, and you need to eat, drink, go to your vaccine clinic, whatever you needed to do. Now, we all speak Russian. What are you going? I don't understand. What do you want? Right? You'd be confused. Would you be frustrated? Would you be like, I don't know what to do. How am I going to get by? Right? So think about that when you have somebody else come in from a similar situation. That's all. Are they presenting an ID or using a name that might not fit the gender you're expecting? Right? If that happens, don't argue with somebody. It is not worth it. They may identify as somebody else. I've gone on calls as a police officer where you do need people's information. You're like, hey, listen, I have to run you. We're at a domestic. We'll have to run you for a background check. May I have your ID? A female party gives me an ID, and it's what appears to be somebody different, appears to be a man. And I'm like, okay, is this you? Yep, that's me. All right. I'm not asking anything further. That's fine. That is them. That is them. All right? I like, it's not about your personal beliefs or judgments. It's just about, like, that's the way they live in their life, and we should respect that. If they do, then just address them as properly. Oh, no, I'd rather be addressed as such and such and such and such. Oh, great. That makes it easier for us. We really appreciate it. That type of thing. A little kindness, a little thoughtfulness goes a long way. And are they another race? Right? Because, like I said, you may live in a community that may have a majority of one race or another or something like that. Maybe they don't feel as easy going into an environment where there is all the workers, all the people in there are of another race and community, right? They may be new to our community. These are small things to take in consideration because those things can make people a little uneasy, a little uncomfortable, and kind of get that little ire up, you know? So we talk about safety. I mean, there's nothing else more important than safety. It is paramount. If at any time you feel unsafe, then you need to escalate that up the ladder. Bring it up to a supervisor. Bring it to whatever other resources you might need. If you feel like you truly do need law enforcement or something like that, be mindful of it. Don't just, use and abuse that. But you know when safety's at risk. Do not let it happen. Most important thing, never consider the use of physical force, right? When you're doing verbal de-escalation, right? That is not what this is about. You don't want to have to go on hands with people. I don't want you. You're all volunteers. You should never have to get yourselves physically involved, put yourself in physical harm in the way of something. The only time physical force is a last resort to prevent injury to yourself or to another person. That's obvious because you have no other choice. That person is acting violently. They are now coming at you. They are striking you. They're hurting another coworker, something like that. You had to defend yourself. Usually results in someone getting hurt, and unfortunately, it could be you, especially if that person is the aggressor. They usually have the mindset and the jump on you. Statements of imminent harm or threats, both direct or indirect, right? Those are pretty obvious ones, right? They're going to have a direct, I'm going to hurt you. You say one more thing to me, and I'm going to blah, 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 blah. I will toss you off this wall. Both direct and indirect, and I say indirect because they might be like, well, if you call the police, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to break something. Maybe you fall on the ground, right? They're indirectly letting you know. They're going to cause you some type of harm, right? So it doesn't have to be a direct threat. An indirect threat can be just as important to be aware of. They're striking someone or something, right? That tumultuous behavior now has spilled out physically. They've hit somebody. It could be another person. They're like, hey, you're sitting too close to me. Why aren't you wearing a mask? Put your mask on. Have you guys ever seen or heard that on TV or in your own clinic, right? So, like, those type of things can get very contentious. You don't tell me what to do. I'm not listening to you. All of a sudden, you have a barroom brawl in the middle of your vaccine clinic, right? So, don't ever think that they can't happen, because I've seen them happen. Do they have a weapon visible? That should be pretty striking to you right then and there, right? I don't care what the weapon is. I'm not saying to use it, but you should be aware of it. Maybe the guy's just like, oh man, I was just down at the local pond and I was fishing. I forgot I had my buck knife on my thing. Maybe not the end of the world, but should you be paying attention to it? should you be alerting somebody else, being like, hey, just not for nothing, but the guy has a knife on him. Not saying he's totally fine, but, you know, let's all be aware that there is a knife present, something like that. Do they have some other suspicious item? Do they have a backpack? Now, having a backpack might not be that unusual. Having a purse might not that be unusual. But if they start to articulate a lot other things they're exhibiting, like this sweating profusely, they're not engaging and talking to any of your staff. They're the person with the balled up thing. They're constantly staring or looking around, or they're looking dead straight ahead and they're making no other like nice movements. Those are the signs and symptoms we should be looking for. Just tell them I'm busy right now. Those are the type of things we should be looking for. Because like I said, while they might have that bag or something like that, it might just have a cell phone, but could it have something else in there? And we know nowadays in the world we live in, right? There's people out there that go to places that they may not believe in this clinic. They might have a religious belief that brought them there. This happens in these type of atmospheres, whether it's churches, whether it's vaccine centers, and people are willing to do and cause violence. And you don't ever want to be like, well, who would have ever thought it could be, you know, happen in the little sleepy town of Walpole, as you're telling Channel 5, right? So think about those things what somebody else might carry with them. The three aspects of communication. What is their body language? What's their tone? And what's their word choice? And vice versa. For us, is just as important. Which of these has the most influence, do you think? What did you say?
Body language.
Body language. How many agree with that? By raising hands. Let's see. Look at right there. 55%. Nonverbal. Look at your eye contact, your posture, your gestures, and your facial expressions, right? And I even say facial expressions, like we say, there's always positives and negatives, right? There could be somebody who's like in a conflict, maybe in a crisis, and you have that person, I'm just saying, I've seen it before, so I know what happens. They go, okay, yeah, sure, yep, okay, yeah, you're upset about that? And they're being condescending, and they're smiling. Do you think that's going to bring the person down, or do you think that's going to bring them up? It's going to really piss them off, right? And like I said, what? What did I do? I'm just smiling. I'm just really happy. Are you? Are you? You know what I mean? That type of thing. So think about what you look at, that eye contact, right? And it also doesn't have to be staring laser beams through somebody. Like you just, all you can do is focus on, it's just casual eye contact is that important type of thing.
Greg,
Yes, please.
eye contact, from my experience, I've worked with a lot of Haitians.
Mhm.
They won't look you in the eye.
Great.
So you have to be really careful culturally too,
Absolutely.
about that kind of contact, because they would not. And when I asked one of the fellow workers, who happened to be a nurse, I
Yeah.
said, why are you not looking at me? Oh, because you're in a place of power.
Mm.
I was her teacher. She said, I taught to look to the ground.
Wow.
So you gotta be really careful about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are other cultures the same way. So, yeah, we always used to say, well, there's gotta be something wrong if the person can't look me in the eye, but
Yep.
that brought it home. that
Great example.
That's not
Yep.
always true.
Absolutely. And like I said, and that's why we want casual like eye contact too, because if we just have casual instead of just staring them down and asking them, expecting them to act like we said earlier, right? How we expect people to behave isn't always the way every individual is, and that's based on so many different things. And then we just brought in the last slide, the whole cultural thing. So it all comes one piece together, right? There's so many components. It's a great point. Thank you so much. How you say it, right, is that pitch. What's your pace that I talked about even with me, right? What's your volume? What's your emotion, right? Because if you get personally involved in a conflict or a crisis, no matter what, most of us do not go settling down, right? Our own reaction is to go up sometimes, right? And we meet that. We meet that demand of that crisis, and that's where it really becomes, you know, that combatant role right there. You go, wait a minute, whoa, I'm in charge here. I'm the one running this. If you don't like it, you can get out. That type of attitude, right? And now all of a sudden, now the game's on. And now they have a willing participate to spar with, right? That's what they've looked for, and now they found it in you. So like I said, the nonverbal, huge, right? What do you think about this communication right here? What do you think? Good, bad, what? What's it telling us? Why? Why? What do you mean? It's like we love you, right? No, probably not, right? Just pointing their finger at us. Does anybody like getting the wag the dog, right? No, I don't think so. Most people don't like their finger in their face, right? Especially if you're really close to somebody. What's somebody standing there like this is?
Let me ask you about that middle one.
Yeah.
What would you think is worse? I mean, look at her, and how would you read the arm? Which, by the way, this is how I sit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you
Yeah,
why.
yeah.
And this is embarrassing, but I'm gonna tell you anyway, especially when I was 80 pounds heavier. It's the only way I could sit. My arms would rest on my beautiful roll I have, and but it wasn't that I was a closed person, but her face tells me it all.
Okay, so 2 great points. Her face is definitely telling you a lot. But I'll tell you this, right? The arms closed. I'm glad you brought this up. It's the arms closed in what situation? You just gave me your example of you sitting there, right? So you're sitting there as you normally do. Now, I'm an arms crosser too, right? If you've ever met a cop, right? We all have one power, and we can only use it when we all form together. So if I stand here, the next cop comes over, and then we go, and then with our superpowers combined, we all can solve the world's problems by having coffee and standing around with our arms crossed. That is our one unique ability and our superpower. Nobody else can do it as a group. So that being said, that's much different than when we're in crisis mode. So if we're talking to somebody,
You've got to know that, though. You've got to know the person and what's happening. But I would say her face tells me it all more than her arms.
yes. But my point is I'm trying to convey is when that person's just doing this, or like I said, a bunch of cops just standing around having coffee and talking, and they're all crossing their arms, it means nothing. It means nothing when you sit there like this and you're just doing that. Now, turn that into the person's dealing with somebody in a crisis, though. Now you're sitting at your desk and you're going like this. You were working on your computer and the person's mad, or they've gone into crisis mode and they're escalating. And then you go like this. Mm-hmm. Now that's different because now it's the situation. You become negative due to what's going on, is what I'm trying to say. I get what you're saying, and I agree with you 1,000%.
I just wanted to bring that up because
Yeah.
this is something I've heard all my life because I used to teach this stuff.
Yep.
Communications. And there's always a body language. I said, be careful how you read body language.
Yep.
It doesn't always mean what you've been taught that it meant.
Right. But the optimal is when we're not standoffish, when somebody's in the crisis mode. When I talk to people, especially with mental health issues, right? Typically, right, and another one, I'll give you another cop adage here, right? We are always, everyone's going to kill me if they have their hands in their pockets. So we always tell people, take your hands out of your pockets. Keep your hands where I can see them. And while there is danger to people having their hands in their pockets, right, it doesn't always mean somebody is going to. Well, people with mental health disorders and people who are in crisis too, it is a sign of openness and welcomeness, what we do with our hands and our body posture, right? Standing in that slight angle, right? Keeping our hands open one way or another. It just shows people, especially with mental health disorders, that you have nothing in your hands. You're opening, you're welcoming them. It's signs and symbols. Remember, that is the nonverbal communication of what you're doing with your body. You're letting people know, right? If I was waving to you, right, that typically means I'm saying hi, right? I'm waving you in. I'm letting you know, hey, there's nothing to be suspicious about. You're welcome here, right? Just by giving off those vibes, people do respond to them better. And so, like I said, it's all in the context of if you were just sitting at your desk like that, exactly, no big deal. But if you were dealing with someone in crisis mode, yeah, it is better to have your hands open, being visible, welcoming them in, showing them those type of signs, that they can understand and take in. So we all know that it's pretty negative. We all could agree on that. At least you guys are. What to look for? We should always be making assessments. Like I said, it's not obsessing over it, but if you're making assessments of what's going on in the room, right, of what the people look like, taking note of it and constantly, is it changing? Is that person shoulder shrugging a lot, right? Are they jaw set with the clenched teeth? Are they mad, right? They're showing that. In your type of setting, that's probably not your normal type of action right there. Are they finger pointing at somebody else in there? Again, that person, hey, put on your damn mask, show me some respect, something like that. They're telling you, do your job, right? Those are signs that the escalation is coming. that fake smile, the excessive gesturing, we talked about some of those. Touching, even when culturally appropriate, we talked about the touching. You definitely need to be careful of that. Any other ones that are huge on there? Accusing or threatening, we know some of those. Anxiety, listen, how could somebody not be a little anxious getting a substance put into their body? Some people, just needles alone will get them anxiety. So think about that when you guys are working with people, how we talk to everybody in general. They are in a clinical setting, like they would be going to a doctor's or a nurse or something like that, that it could be anybody who's experiencing those things. It could be the guy who comes in and he looks like he's just jacked. He just came from the gym. And he's like, yeah, I work out. I can lift 350 pounds. I can squat 800. It doesn't matter. But inside, he's like, oh, man, I'm sweating right now. I don't want to get a needle in me, right? And like, is that possible? Yeah. Just because that person's a big, strong, physical person doesn't change their mindset. It doesn't mean that they're impervious to feeling those things, those anxieties, or having an anxiety disorder. Are they hostile, threatening? Again, I think some of those you're just going to know. Not open-minded or listening to you at all. I'm not going to do what you tell me. No. Why? Why should I have to do that? No. Why do I need to fill out this form? This is bullshit, right? No. Shouldn't have to fill out this form. Just give me the damn job. It's private for me. I don't want anybody knowing what I did. Could that easily happen? Absolutely, right? Uncaring or unknowing type of person. Things we want to avoid, right? And this is huge right here. Acting like you're in charge or bossy, right? And we all know that, like, you guys all have your role and stuff like that. But, like, I used to tell my guys all the time, I go, if you think you're in charge, you're not. Somebody who doesn't care, or if they go into crisis mode, they don't care about those things. You can't rationalize with them. They don't see authority at that point. So your stars, your stripes, your roles, your credentials, everything's out the window. And the more bossy you try to be, the worse it usually gets. You know, the more you can be on that person's level, you're going to have a better outcome. You don't want to be that person who's acting like the boss or you're bossing them around. Don't take it personally, right? If somebody is in crisis, they might even start saying things to you that are insulting. Hey, listen, you used to weigh 80 pounds more. Look at you. Something like that. Hey, I don't like the way you got glasses on, whatever the case may be. It may be personal, right? It may be offensive culturally to you. You might be like, wow, I can't believe they're saying this to me. That really makes me upset. Just remember, it's that person's crisis. It's not actually about you. You are the figurehead of maybe where they're thinking about right now because you work in some form of action for the government, for the town, for the community. And you represent that right then and there, and they might be taking it out on you. And I'm not saying it's right. Don't get me wrong. It's not. And it's not fair. And I don't ever want to see that happen, you guys be mistreated. But if you make it personal, you will have that higher result that you're probably going to be more willing to engage. No, I'm not going to let you talk to me like that. No. I can't believe you just said that to me. Now I'm going to do something back. I'm going to act a certain way. I'm going to respond, right? Like every action has its own reaction. We don't want to have that. Do not get involved with them, right? It's like I said, they're looking for you to engage with that. Don't start yelling at the person. What's not helpful? Just stop it, right? Hey, just stop the behavior you're doing. Stop yelling. Stop doing this, whatever the case may be. I used to go around, guys, if I could just tell people to stop doing something, I'd be able to cure people right then and there. Just stop it. And they'd be, oh, why didn't I think about that? So I should just stop being aggressive? I should just stop being loud? You said it to me, so now it makes sense, sir. Said nobody ever, right? Just stop doing it. It's not going to change the behavior. I can guarantee you it will go the other way. Again, that condescending behavior. Oh, I understand. You're special. You don't have to follow the rest of the rules that everybody else in our clinic does. What can we do for you today, sir? Right? Those type of things. Don't be that person. Becoming argumentative. Again, when somebody is in crisis mode and they are escalating, you can't rationalize with them. It doesn't matter. You can be like, the sun's blue. The sky's blue. No, it's not. It's that old adage. They will fight with you tooth and nail. We got to work. How do we just de-escalate in that moment? How do we get them down at that time? Don't make it an argument, and you might actually be right. You probably will be right. It won't matter, though, because you're just going to keep going back. It's called the old loop, right? You're just going the hamster wheel. You're just going around. Yes, it is. No, yes, you do have to do it. Yes, no. And you're like, no, I know I'm right. No, I got it on a piece of paper here. It says I'm right. It doesn't matter. It's not about that right then and there with them. Something else triggered that, right? And so even if you're right, do not keep going around and around the loop. You have to figure out a way to change that up, to get them out of that cycle. That's going to be the more important thing that we'll talk about. Again, with that touching, don't touch somebody who's, especially in crisis, like I said. It's one thing if you know the person, something you come up and maybe you're like, oh, I was alerting someone, oh, so it's your turn, something like that. It might be a little bit different, but especially if somebody is actually in a crisis or they're escalating, definitely not the time to go hands-on no matter what. Don't make them the center of attention, right? All of a sudden, all eyes are on them in the middle of your clinic. Everything's gone wrong in this person's life, and now they're the center of attention. It's bad for a lot of reasons, right? You don't want to embarrass them, and you also don't want to feed into it, right? You don't want to give them that stage. You don't want to, like, feed into it, right? Every plant needs rain to grow, right? So they're looking for it. I mean, I used to, like, I remember specifically an analogy I used to give people. We had a high school student, and now we have a couple of SROs, but the high school called and asked for me to come up specifically while I was on duty. And I work as the crisis officer and stuff like that, so I said, yeah, I'll come up. And they told me basically there's a student in there, and at one point he got up out of one of his classes, and he just says, start using, swearing words and not so nice language, and walks out of his teacher's room. And the kid's just kind of swearing out of nowhere. And he starts walking down the hall. And as he's walking down the hall, he had gotten so hyped up about something that happened the prior week with another teacher that he waited. And when he got back to school that day, he finally thought in his own mind, I'm getting up out of class right now, and I won't use names, but I'm going to go down to Mr. Johnson's class, and I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to walk in that class, I'm just going to punch him out. So he's walking down the hall, and he's going to go do that, and he got himself so overhyped that he actually passed out in the middle of the hallway and fell on the ground and smacked his head. Now he gets up, he's embarrassed, so on and so forth. Now, the fight is still in him, but he goes off into his next class. And he goes, no, I'm going to my class. And they're like, obviously, little Johnny, you're not going to your next class. We need to talk about what happened, and we need to figure out where we go forward with this. And he won't leave the classroom. Now the admin's like, hey, listen, we don't know what to do here. We have the SRO up here, and he doesn't want to leave. So I go in there, and I'm trying to talk to him, and he takes his cell phone on the desk, and he starts playing his music as loud as possible, playing some rap music, and he's singing along, and he's basically, verbally giving me, F you, buddy. And I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. So I'm like, hey, listen, are you willing to talk to me? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to go down to the cafeteria, get something to eat? I heard you fell down. Maybe you're just thirsty, something like that. Trying to make some inroads with him and stuff like that. And eventually, he was making such a ruckus, I said, all right, we're not going to give him this attention. All the other kids in the staff, I asked, leave the room. Because he's got an audience, and he loves it. He's like the star of the show. So I said, hey, why don't you all leave? Can you all leave? And everybody just left, except for my guys who are outside. And eventually, he starts breaking down little by little. And I just sit there, and I go, hey, man, if you want to sit here and do your homework, I said, I got time to burn. I'm on for another 5.5 hours, so I'm cool, man. There's probably some things I could catch up on, learn from you right now. And I'm just trying to make some inroads with him. And eventually I said, hey, listen, you do realize that this only ends a couple different possible ways. I want to empower you to make the right decision. Now, I point to my buddy out there. He's one of these guys, 6'7", he's huge. And I said, you see that guy out there? I go, he's a goon. He's an absolute thug. I go, he scares me. I go, he's rolling up his sleeves right now. Do you think it's because it's hot out? I go, he's just waiting for the chance so he can get his big bear claws on you. I go, he wants to go hands-on with you. I said, I don't want to see that. I said, you know what I think would be a better idea? I know you're a tough dude. Obviously, you were really upset about what happened today. How about you keep some of that street cred? Instead of letting him grab you and throw you onto a stretcher forcefully because you got to go around the hospital for what happened, I said, what if you made your own decision and you said, I want to voluntarily go with you guys, and you walk out like the school psycho in front of everybody outside in the hallway right now. He turns off that damn phone. He walks right out the door. Because it gave him another alternative. Did I care that he was going to have some sort of win, that he was going to be empowered? No, it resolved it without us having to go hands-on is my point. Thinking outside the box. I don't need to win right then and there, right? You don't need to win in these type of situations right then and there. What's going to make it pass? What's going to make it come down for the moment? Until that person can come back to a reasonable point of communication again. That's the most important thing to take out of all this. You don't need to win in the moment of crisis. Wait for it to go and subside afterwards. That's really what it comes down to. Threatening the individual. You're not going to get your shot today. If you don't stop acting like this, do you think they really care at that point? They could go somewhere else. It doesn't matter. Right? It's something else is so important that has gone on, that has brought them to that point, that is such a small thing left in their life. Because like I said, they happen to be here, that's fine. But threatening to withdraw care, or you're not welcome back here, I'm going to call the police. Like I said, even if you actually end up needing to, the threat and those insinuations are not going to de-escalate it, right? Those are only going to bring somebody up to, go ahead, call the police. You think I care? You know what I'm going to do? Right? Those type of things. So be aware of those. What can we do? These are the most important things. What can we do? The active listening, called the 80-20 rule, right? Now, I always put up there, and I tell everybody, this is one of my favorite lines. I'll live this for the day I die right here. Be quick to listen and slow to speak. Quick to listen and slow to speak. When I was going into the Air Force, I was waiting in a room similar to this, and we all had individual desks. And they had a priest that was walking around. He's, does anybody want to pray with me? Is anybody, spiritual, blah, 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 blah. I know you're going off on a journey to embark on your life, and I'm here for you, and all those type of things. And he looks at me, and he goes, oh, man, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, who's talking to him? He's like, you. He's like, I can see it in your eyes. He's like, you got the devil in you. He's like, I can tell. He's like, you're one of those guys who just shoot your mouth off, huh? Huh. Maybe he does know me, actually. And I'm like, hey, yes, Father. This is confession. And he goes, listen, when you get there, you're going to have to remember this line right here. Be quick to listen and slow to speak. Because every one of these dudes is going to get up and challenge you. They're going to get up in your face. What are you going to do when that happens? Have you thought about it? I said, well, I'm not usually one to let somebody talk to me like that. I'll probably have something snide or funny to say back to them. He goes, you will get yourself in trouble. And you will not be long for the military, son. And I was like, man, I thought about that whole ride down to Texas on that airplane. I thought about what he was saying. And I was like, oh, man. And the first dude that got up on my face was like right up on my grill. I mean, literally spitting and everything. And I listened to him in my head, and I didn't actually say a word back to him. So it was just, sir, yes, sir. And I realized that was the one thing that saved my life. Well, with anybody, right? That active listening rule, especially somebody in crisis. Being the better listener. I cannot cure people. I can't just tell them, okay, they just told me, I'll tell you how to fix this. Just stop acting the way you are, get in line, do what everybody else is doing. We'll fix nobody. Being that active listener, the 80-20 rule, just letting them talk, not only is it easier for you, they'll probably tell you what's wrong, right? Literally, in what happened, not just right now, because it's typically not about right now. It's typically something that recently happened to them that set this into motion. But you will let them drain that energy out, right? Run their course. Run out of gasoline. Run out of fuel, right? After a while, people just get burnt out. They'll almost be there to the point where they're like, are you even listening to me? Because you might not even respond. You might be like, okay, hopefully you do those, affirmations. I'm listening to you. Yes, I'm here for you. I understand that you're upset. Those type of things. But that active listening rule. Being that calming presence, setting the right tone. You mimic behavior. We all do. Just like I told you, right? A bunch of cops would all stand around like this. Hey, what's up? What's going on? Oh, yeah, I was just doing that. Whatever, right? We mimic each other. If you see somebody or hear somebody who's yelling or screaming, typically you end up matching or meeting that. But if you're the one who sets the tone when that person is in crisis, typically somebody will want to mimic you the same way we just did with our physical actions. They will probably be that person who, okay, wait a minute, they're nice and calm, they're slow. You can bring them down just by doing that simple act. Asking their name and using it. Hey, I didn't get your name. Not only does it interrupt the cycle of thought about the, oh my God, I'm raging right now, right? You're like, hey, I never got your name. I apologize. Oh, hey, Joe, so nice to meet you. Listen, It looks like you've been going through a tough time. Do you want to talk to me about it? What brought you to this point that it's gotten so out of control that you're so upset today? Let's talk. And then you keep repeating their name. Joe, 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 I hear you. Joe, I understand what you're going through. Joe, that sounds terrible. It personalizes it, right? If you know somebody and you talk to them and they know your name, it becomes more personal. It becomes like you're talking to a friend, right? If you don't know the name, you're just sitting there, hey, sir, can you just stop doing this mess, right? It just becomes, they're just another number statistic. You can work your way in with them. Reflective listening. Anybody know what reflective listening actually means? You know what that term is?
Reflecting in different words what they just said.
Absolutely. And almost literally copying what they said or using a paraphrase. You know what I mean? So the guy's like, you know what? I don't want this stinking jab today. I don't know. I'm really upset. I don't like the way the world's going. I don't like the fact there's people in all wearing masks. I don't feel safe here. And you're like, hey, what's going on today? Is it that? Is it that? Because what you're telling me right now is you're just upset about that people aren't wearing masks. You're upset about the way the world is today. You've seen some things in the media that you're not happy with. He goes, yes, you understand exactly what I'm saying. Yes, Greg, I can't believe it. It's like we've known each other all our lives. And I know it sounds silly, but that paraphrasing or even repeating exactly back to them is that like it's bouncing back to them, letting them know. Because a lot of those signals are crossed up in their minds right then and there. And it helps them clarify, like, okay, and you're not endorsing, agreeing, or disagreeing with them. You're just saying, I understand what you're telling me. I understand that. That's what you're upset about. Yes, that's what I'm upset about. You're not saying, I could see why you're upset about that. We're all upset about it. Not like that. The motivational interviewing. Again, just like I gave that kid an option, a way out, it's almost an empowerment. Within reason and being safe about it, right? Like, hey, I can see you're really anxious right now, right? Is this something that we could do to maybe make you not so anxious? Are you thirsty? Do you want something? Do we have water over there? Would that make you feel better? No, I mean, I can't wait in here. I am really, I feel unsafe because people aren't wearing masks right now, and I just can't do this. I'm really anxious. Okay, hey, I got an idea. What if we did this, right? Tell me what car you're in. Go sit in your car. When it comes up to your turn in the line, I will come out, I'll knock on your window and say, hey, Joe, it's your turn now. Do you want to come in? We'll bring you right in. We'll get it done. You don't have to stand in that long line right now. Would that help? Like I said, is it worth it to go back and be like, nope, these are the rules. Nope, you got to sit with everybody else. Or do you know there's a crisis going on and you're willing to bend? Because at what cost to you? You send somebody outside to walk to get some fresh air and you go, hey, come on in. That might last with them forever, that little act of kindness. But you motivated them out of that. You said to them, hey, listen, we don't have to go down this road of crisis right now. Let's figure out a way that we can solve this. What is the problem? What is a solution to take us out of that moment right then and there? If they stand or sit, it's often good to do the same thing. Again, mimicking parenting. If you are going to sit with somebody and you feel it is safe, I typically say, just do anything but sit across from them, right? You sit across from a person, it usually means that they're oppositional, that they're probably your boss, they're probably reprimanding you, right? Those type of things. Sit, like at an angle with somebody, sit next to somebody. I used to go to crisis calls all the time. I'd go with clinicians. We do a dual response. And I would literally get people and I'd sit right next to them and they'd sit across from the clinician and they would say to me, what do you think I should do? I'm like, me? Yeah, what do you think I should do? I don't trust them. I trust you. And I feel like you're here for me. And I'd be like, wow. And that really is a gain of trust. I mean, it's unbelievable to hear somebody say, here I am, I'm the guy who can be like, oh, we're going to take you away and we have to put you in an ambulance, something like that. And they're like, no, I trust you. What do you think? I feel like you're here advocating for me. And I feel like they're against me. Because they'd be sitting across from them with a pad and a pen. So they're the bad guys now. They're interviewing, right? And they're just looking at them like, I got to check boxes. So think about those things if you are in that environment, standing, sitting, reflect what they do. Offer a different environment. Like I said, if you can take them somewhere more private, whether it's into another room, it's outside. it's always safer, and it gets them away from, like I said, all that negative attention of what's going on in the moment. Know when to let someone else step in. If you've become too involved and you're just to have that personality conflict with that person, don't go that next level. Let somebody else step in. Or if you are that partner in here and you see somebody else getting into it, give them the old, hey, let me see if I can't work something here. Especially if you know the person, right? You've identified the person, you know them from the community, right? And you see that Susie's having a tough time with Joe. And you walk over, you go, hey, wait a minute, I've always had a good relationship with that guy. I used to coach them. I was the nurse. I was whatever. I was the firefighter. I used to go, he used to come to the touch-a-truck, whatever the case may be, right? And you go over, hey, Joe, what's up? It's me, Greg, how you been? Oh, hey, what's up? Hey, I don't want to talk to this person right now. They just suck at life. Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. You know what? She's a really nice person. Just, you know what? Hey, maybe you guys had a, listen. We all have people we don't get along with. Hey, let's just move on. Why don't I do this with you? What if I was the one who gave you the jab instead? Oh, I'd let you do it. I don't even want them near me. Who cares at that point, right? That's not the time to get into it. Let somebody else take over. Or be that person who jumps in and helps a friend. Do you or someone else know that person? Like I said, those are easily to identify. Not only if you have a better inroad with them, but especially if it's with a person with a mental health condition. Oftentimes, people will call us in the public as law enforcement officials and say, I find this behavior that this person is exhibiting to be disturbing to me. And why aren't you taking them away? Why aren't you Section 12 them and bring them to the hospital and get them treatment? And I go up to them, and I'll give you one example of this guy, Pete. Now, he could literally come up. I mean, he actually does have bipolar disorder. He actually calls himself bipolar Pete. And not disparaging, he calls himself that. And he comes up, and he could frighten even cops by the way he talks and says things. His rapid speech, things that, like stories, offensive language, all that type of stuff. And somebody said to me one time, hey, this guy's out of control. I'm over here at TJ Maxx, and I'm shopping. This isn't right. Why don't you do something? So I go over, I say, hey, all right, I'll go talk to him. So fun, I'm familiar with him. Hey, Pete, what's up? Hey, Officer Joe, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. He starts doing his routine. Then I said, hey, how's everything going, man? You taking your meds and everything? You feeling okay, Pete? Oh, yeah, I'm good, blah, 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 blah. Now, I know Pete so often that I know what Pete looks like when he's in crisis mode. Now, while that may be offensive or wild to somebody else, that's Pete's baseline. I'm not taking him to the hospital. I'm not even asking him to stop acting the way he is. Pete's just being Pete. That's the way he lives his life. He can't control it. But I'm familiar with him, so I know that's his baseline. Now, somebody else, that might be awe-striking. They might be scared of that person. So if you know that person, that also gives you, what is that person's baseline? Hey, come here. Yeah, I know that person's complaining about him, but I actually know them. Oh, they're on the spectrum. Oh, that person has a mental health disorder. That probably actually just is the way it is. Maybe we can go over and talk to that person and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry that's bothering you today. But listen, that person's actually okay. We know that person. We know when they're not good. If yes, can that help? Do you know their baseline? And has there been an incident previously? And how might that help us? If you've had an incident previously with an individual that's been in an escalation or in crisis mode, how could that help you? What do you think? Perfect. Perfect. There's a good chance if it worked the first time or multiple times, could you try it again? Absolutely. So give it a shot. What's the worst going to happen? It doesn't work, but if it was a positive thing that you tried and it was a positive outcome, try it. So at least you have some sort of angle on that person. Casual eye contact, we talked about some of those things. Standing at a 45-degree angle, you have greater balance, mobility. And like I said, you do have to think about your safety. Like in the world we live in right now, there are some people who just don't care. So you do have to think about it almost a little in a tactical sense, like, we do. Exposes less of the body as a target. Stay far enough that they can't grab you, hit you, kick you. I know you guys might be in tight spaces with some people, so, what your distance is from somebody can always, I know there's comfortable and uncomfortable. You definitely don't want to be that close talker when somebody's in crisis mode. And you don't want to be so offensively afar that you're yelling at the person. Stay far away, never turn your back, maintain at least 2 arms length, and casually position yourself behind a barrier table chair if it ever becomes where it becomes a physical threat to you or somebody else. Is this person less aggressive? And if so, why? Which one? What do you think? Bottom left is what? What do you think?
Less aggressive.
Why do you say that?
They just look more calm.
More calm. Okay, great. Yep. Anyone else? What else?
Not so oppositional.
Not so observational, right? Take note of like how she's standing, right? Slightly canted at the person. She's got her hands up, welcoming, open, those type of things, right? She's kind of standing there, that smirk. She's got get a little of that condescending look. People who are violence prone, right? Again, if they're a trauma-induced person, right? They may have had something from their childhood, what they commonly refer to as adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs, right? They may have had some sort of emotional, physical, sexual harm that they may have been traumatized. They may have been somebody who's been in the criminal justice system that does have violence tendencies, or been a victim of, right? Could have been a domestic violence victim or something like that. Prone individuals perceive the need for wider territorial space in order to feel comfortable, and 5 times the normal physical space. So if somebody articulates to you, hey, give me my space, there's probably a reason why, please do so. How might you feel from, this is just a reflective question, I'm just going to put that up there and I'll let you absorb it and take it with you. How might you feel when another person, family member, client, has different spatial boundaries than you do? How will you address those own spatial boundaries going forward? Not what you say, but how you say it. Again, those tone expressions, feelings, or attitudes. The listener interprets the speaker's message through tone. 38% of the communication depends on that. Try saying it to yourself. Like I said, we're not going to do it, but you can just take it with you. Say that phrase. You made it on here in time in a suspicious, happy, patronizing, and irritable tone. Same phrase, same sentence, but it comes out different depending on how you say it or communicate it to that person. And that is important. Think about these things going forward. What is your tone? Do you have a stern voice? Are you timid? You got to be sure and comfortable with yourself when you're talking to somebody in a de-escalation of crisis, right? You have to be sure of yourself. You have to be comforting, calm. Are you angry? Are they agitated? What is the volume like? Is it loud, overpowering, authority, unwillingness to hear others? Are you too soft and unassuming? Are you docile, possibly fear? Rate of speech, slow but rhythmic rate. Are you that soothing person? Are you both calm and firm? Promote that confidence, right? You have to think how it looks in those situations. Have you ever watched somebody else do it? Parrot those motions. Think about it before. All right, I need to bring myself down. Wherever you think you might be, remember our own perception of what we're like is probably about 50% higher than we normally are. So make sure you know, I got to bring myself down. I'm that loud talker. Oh, I'm usually that meek person. Maybe I could bring it up just a notch. That politeness, be respectful. Like I said, calling them by their name. Please and thank you, all those type of things. It goes a long way with somebody who's in that type of crisis mode. Handle them carefully, for words have more power than atom bombs. Think about that, right? Don't get loud, yell or scream at a person. Wait until they take a breath. Don't interrupt them, right? Give them that moment, right? Don't overtalk them. Don't anticipate. Nobody wants to look at somebody when you're in a conversation with them if they're in crisis and they just have that look like they can't wait just to tell you what they think or how to cure or fix what's going on. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, let me tell you. No. Wait until they just stop and they take a breath. Hey, would it be okay if I just told you this? This is what I'm observing right now. Right? Because typically if you say to somebody, hey, you seem really upset, somebody might actually call you on the carpet. Why are you saying that about me? I'll tell you why. Your voice is really high. You're pointing your finger at everybody. You're yelling. You're doing X, Y, or Z. You probably have articulable reasons. I saw you over there. You were sweating profusely. You were clenching your fist. You just seem like you were having a bad day. It's okay. I'm just letting you know what I've observed. That's okay. Just letting them know. That may resonate with them and say, oh, geez, now that I think about it, I am displaying all those things. Okay, maybe something is wrong. Responding simply, repeat if necessary. People with mental health problems or people within crisis, all those wires up top, they're going screwy, right? all those neurons in their head, everything's wiring, it's going off, right? Nothing's succinct, nothing is clear to them. You may have to repeat to them. Be clear, be short in your sentences, how you talk to them. Keep it simplified, right? Why do I have to fill out these effing forms? There might actually be a real question there, right? So just be sensitive to that, even if they're coming off harsh in how they're asking it. Do not answer abusive questions. Why are all the employees in Walpole or the government such you-know-whats, right? Don't engage with that. I'm sorry you feel that way. We always try to treat people with respect. Seems like something else may have upset you. Was it something that happened here today or from a prior incident that we're not aware of? We'd like to be able to help you today. Well, what could we do to make that experience better for you? Those type of things. I know it sounds simple, but it is big, goes a long way. Help them talk out those angry feelings other than act on them. Don't be defensive. Some of these will be repeat, but be honest. Explain those limits and the rules. You can be clear with someone being like, hey, listen, you're not trying to tell them, hey, you need to stop yelling, you need to stop doing this, but being like, I understand that you're angry, but there are other people here today that are, here to get treatments and stuff like that. They're here to get their shots, whatever capacity you're working in. Maybe we could just not use that language. I understand that you're angry and that you're yelling, and I don't even mind if you do that, to be honest with you. But maybe we could tone down some of the rhetoric. Would that be possible? Would you be willing to talk like that? Empathizing with those feelings and not the behaviors is exactly what we're getting at. Reduce the level of anxiety, encourage the possibility for discussion. And reasoning with the enraged person is not possible. You do need to understand that. You cannot reason with them at that point. That's why we're just trying to de-escalate them. Get out of that loop, right? We're not trying to reason with them. Hey, listen, you need to do this in order to do that. We're not going to allow you to, it's not about that right then and there. It's getting them out of the crisis, getting them de-escalated. That's all it's about, because you cannot reason with them. You can tell them until you're blue in the face that they're wrong or what they believe is wrong. It will not matter. Use minimalized encourages. Like I said, when you talk to them, okay, yeah, showing them that you're listening. I see, I am listening. Using open-ended questions, very important, right? Open-ended as opposed to closed-ended. Use phrases like, tell me about it. What do you think? How are you feeling right now? Is there something that might help you today? Allow you to get more information at this point, because they're going to tell you something probably. How do you get to this point in crisis today? And I'm not talking like, well, I got up, I brushed my teeth, I ate some shit. No. Like, what brought you to the crisis today? Like, I get it. Like, something happened here. And that's terrible. I'm sorry that you're going through something like that, right? And real empathetic response. But what actually brought this on today, right? You don't need to know their history. You don't have to go back on what it says. You're just trying to get the information of going, all right, if I knew what was wrong, how could I might be able to assist this person, de-escalating them and getting them out of this situation right now? Is it potentially dangerous to you? You're going to be able to figure that out through all these and allow you to assess whether the person is rational or not, right? Whether they're willing to talk to you, whether they're getting more aggressive. Did you take the steps to de-escalate the crisis? If it's still going off after a reasonable amount of time, listen, there becomes a certain point. You may have to say, I need to talk to a supervisor. Do we need to, at this point, depending on what the situation is, do we need other resources? Law enforcement, firefighters, EMS, do we need clinicians? Do we need any type of alternatives? Maybe a religious. What additional resources do you have? You should know them. You should have them provided for you. And if you don't, inquire about them. Hey, what if a situation did arise like that? What is the preferred response, Melissa or whoever? What would you guys prefer us do in this situation? Hey, listen, that's way above your pay grade. I'd rather you in that situation do X, Y, or Z in this situation. Maybe we could call police. Maybe it's somebody who is actually willing to get mental health help and they are a little bit delusional. You say, hey, would you like to talk to somebody? Well, what does exactly that mean? Well, maybe you can call Riverside or something like that. Hey, we have a crisis line in Walpole that we have, right? Minds Matter. We have these free hotlines. Hey, maybe you'd like somebody to come out right now and talk to you today. Would you like that? Sure, I'd like that, actually. Thank you. Like I said, clinicians, religious leaders, and sobriety options, right? If you have that person as a substance user or something like that. Hey, do you want to talk to anybody? Oh, here's some information now. Leave you with a good feeling. Can you think of a time when someone supported you by asking these type of questions? Something to ponder, a reflective question. Have you discussed as a group or staff the members of the incident? This is all after action review. If you do actually have an incident where you had escalation, you want to be able to talk about it. Have you discussed it as a group or with staff members? That's very important, right? What happened here today? Oh, so that was Joe? Oh, I know Joe. Oh, that's happened several times before. Actually, this is a little more alarming now that I know this happened. I know you experienced it today, but it's funny because Tim told me last week he had a similar incident with Joe. So now they're adding stuff up. Well, is that potential person escalating? Are they getting more violent? Are they getting more aggressive? Those type of things. It's good to communicate about that. The focus should be on how to improve, not to criticize people. Like I said, you're volunteers. You're not trained professionals, right? You're not trained de-escalators in a sense. This is a quick intro. But you should focus on not the negative about what the person didn't do right? Because chances are you don't come across that often. Again, you're going to lose that skill even after tonight, right? So what could we have done better? That's what we want to discuss. Hey, next time, maybe we could do X, Y, or Z. So maybe that doesn't get out of control. Or maybe we don't have to call the police, or whatever the case may be. Having a better outcome. And finalize by pointing out the positive, right? Hey, you know what I loved what you did today? Always leave any of the volunteers or your coworkers with a good thought. Hey, oh man, I'm so mad. I can't believe Greg just came last night, and then I let that person get the better of me. Hey, you know what though? At first you did X, Y, or Z, and I saw you were trying your hardest. I know they got the better of you in the end, but you know what? You were doing a good job. I saw what you were doing, where you were going with that. Awesome. Leave everybody with a thumbs up. Everybody wants to win, especially because you guys are volunteers, and you should feel that way. Remember why you guys do this. And this is a phrase that sticks with me, so I'll leave you on. Give help to those who need it the most, right? So my mother, when I was about, 8, 9 years old, my little sister, as I told you, she's so severely handicapped, hundreds of operations, always in and out of the hospital. Any little kid at that age, right? And all the attention's on the other kid, what's bound to happen? You get a little jealous, right? So one day I say to my mother, I say, hey mom, can I ask you a question? I said, why do you love Andrea more than me? And I'd never seen my mother be speechless. She was like, what? And she was caught off guard. And my mother walked away. Took a couple minutes. She comes back, she said, I'm so upset that you said that to me. She goes, I didn't really think about it. I know I spent a lot of time with her, but you have to understand, I don't love her more than you. It's just she needs my love the most. And that's really what it comes down to. The people in our community, they come in here all the time. They make it away around your room. They go through the process just without fail, without problem. They're your perfect person, as you said earlier, right? It's those people in our community that happen to need that help the most at that time. Hopefully you remember to do the right thing. Don't run away from the problem. Run towards it and say, hey, I'll be able to help this person. I'm that person who can give them that little bit of that extra care, that little bit of that empathetic response, and just know at that moment they're going through their worst crisis for whatever reason, and that you probably will have some positive impact because of what you do every day. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for welcoming me into your home here. And I appreciate everything you do, and I wanted to end that note, like I said, how I started. Thank you. I appreciate everything. That's it, folks. Have a great night. Sorry I went over.
All right, I just want to thank Greg. That was awesome. I hope everyone has something to take away from. I know I do. I will be using a lot of de-escalation at home with my very strong-willed 6-year-old daughter. Do you do private sessions? Can you come home with me? As you were saying things, I'm like, wait, this is resonating. This is really. So I think just volunteer, work-wise, life-wise, I think we can all take a lot from it. So we want to thank Greg. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I know we ran a little late. Please take food, take backpacks. It's less things that we have to pack up and ship out of here. So take everything. Thankful for the MRC and for helping out, planning the event. Nancy also for setting up and everything. The steering committee, Kathy, Rachel, health department. Thank you for all that you do. And we're looking forward to our next collaboration. Everyone drive safe. Take care.